All right, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. My name is Pete Deely, and sadly today you are stuck with me as your host because Professor Lucas is away doing good work out there in the world. I'm pretty sure he started his day with submission coffee, although my friends keep reminding me, like you mention it, then you don't tell us where to get it, and you can get it at thejujitsumindset.com. Um, we are on just an incredible lucky streak of getting to talk to amazing people in the world. And today continues the streak. The divine's been so good to us. And so, uh, Mr. Mike Diaz, Professor Mike, thanks for spending some time with us. I'm really glad that you're here.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And we were talking just before we recorded early on in the podcast, we had a chance to talk to Pedro Sauer for about, Master Pedro Sauer for about an hour or so. And in previous episodes, I think I quote him like every time. Every episode, I slide in something he said to me on that. And this is a podcast about you, but could we maybe just start with maybe how you and he got to know each other and his relationship to you and your jiu-jitsu?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I was really fortunate that he happened to be in Utah when I got out of the military. I came back to Utah and he was here. And I tell everybody, I was really afraid to meet him because I heard he was traveling around Utah at all the jiu-jitsu gyms and showing all this everybody there how good jiu-jitsu is, how effective it is.
Hmm.
And I heard about that before I ever went into his academy.
Right.
So, when I finally, was brave enough to go in there and meet him, I just found out he was probably one of the most phenomenal human beings I ever met.
Yeah. My
And
God. Yeah.
it's kind of what I needed at that point in my life too, because, I was 27 years old. I just come out of the military and, I needed a different outlook on, really what a martial artist it truly is. And he,
Right.
he definitely did that for me.
And so over time, you become a black belt under his instruction, as I understand it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's an amazing experience. It's interesting for me because I'm a beginner. I started at 50 and I'm 4 years into my journey. And prior to starting, I had a very, very superficial, very little understanding of jiu-jitsu in any way, shape, or form. And so when I had the conversation with Pedro Sauer, I felt so lucky to be connected to what felt like the vein that begins, jujitsu in the Western Hemisphere, at least, to be connected to Elio in some way, small way, shape, or form, just to hear and talk to somebody that had that type of history. It was just extraordinary, as opposed to other things, right? Like I've boxed and I've done other types of martial arts, and those things, we're going back so far. There's no connection to anybody who you could say, okay, they started this particular thing. And although Elio may not have started it, he's certainly a key figure, right,
You
in
know,
the whole jiu-jitsu development.
yes, for sure. I agree 100%. On when I look at my, black belt certificate, like, I'm very proud of it, of course, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when I look at it, on it, it has my name, and then it has Master Sauer's name, and then right below it, it has Hickson and Elio Gracie. Well, from the source, I don't know, some good karma right there, I guess, for me, something, was very fortunate to go down that path.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a special time because that group and that generation, still I think is having very real impact on us. And yet at the same time, there's lots of other young, people changing things now too. So there's very curious to see it. We had Professor Bernardo Faria on here and talking about sort of the impact of all this online instruction where you get access to people that you would have, in the 80s and 90s, you would have zero access. And then if you had a VHS tape of somebody, you might get some instruction. But it's
Yeah.
no different now, right? We're all getting to learn from each other in a different way than ever before in history. You mentioned that like meeting Master Sauer at that particular time in your life was important, and I'm always curious to ask, sort of, where would you have been in your life without jiu-jitsu, and then how did it pivot you towards the direction you went in because you dedicated so much of your life to this art. What would have happened
Right.
if that wasn't the case? Where do you think you would have headed?
I'm sure you probably hear this a lot, but, like for all of us guys that come up, we probably were on a real kind of destructive path, like I
Mhm.
definitely was. And so I try not to think about that too much. My life is
Yeah.
not really heading in a real positive direction. But I
Right.
was still young, I still,
Mhm.
could have had time to hopefully change a little bit. Um, so, I could have ended up, worst case scenario, maybe in jail or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I also, I used to have a construction company. And I really enjoyed that, but it wasn't my love. It wasn't, every day I go to work now, it's not work. I don't go to an
Yeah.
office or anything like that. I go hang out with my friends and my life is truly blessed,
Yes.
and so I tell everybody, whenever I see Master Sauer, we bow, we bow to our instructors, but it's not like this thing I'm supposed to do. Like I'm very grateful for my life right now. So,
Yeah.
it's the end of my battle here. I'm like, man, I have a really truly blessed life.
Yeah.
I could be still hammering nails and working on construction or something even far worse.
Yeah, I mean, that not everybody get a chance to bloom into what they were supposed to bloom into, right? I mean, like circumstances, fear, like, oh, that I could never do this, even though I really want to do this thing, fear gets in the way of those things. And so, you had a lot of courage to pick a path that was less certain than certainly other things that you knew. And I have great respect for you and other folks that do that. When when I think, or when you think about yourself in that young days where you had a whole series of choices in front of you, and when I think about Master Sauer, I think about as tough and strong a fighter as he is and all the rest of it. My impression of him in the bit of time I've spent is of a person with a lot of gentleness in his character and a lot of strength as a human being that is expressed as caring and being careful with people. But those values for young men not don't always come through as strength. So I'm curious, as you got attracted to jujitsu and kind of came under his instruction, what is it that turns your head that direction? Like, what is it that said, "This is for me"? What were you reacting to?
Well, you're right. I think when we're young, we have to be macho and strong and come off as that. And when I was growing up, that was the symbol of strength, right? Like in any martial art I did, that's what I saw.
Right,
But when I met Master Sauer, he wasn't that. And I was like, this is the nicest guy I ever met in my life.
right,
And that was a real shock to me, but it was like real enlightening to me. I was like, I don't have to walk around, like acting tough anymore. You can just be tough, you
right,
know, just be really skilled at and that was the other thing, like tough or skilled. Like, man, you can be super skilled at what you do. And if you are, then that gives you the freedom to be whoever you want.
right, right.
And, I started kind of later too, I mean, back when I started in 1997. And so I was like around 27 years old, 27, 28 years old. So I wasn't super young. I was growing up, it was about time I made some grown up changes. And those
Right.
personality changes, I think helped me more than anything.
Oh, without a
you
doubt,
know?
right?
So, and that's what I saw in him. I saw somebody that was, amazingly skilled, super tough, but just, like a gentle person,
Yeah,
didn't have to act tough.
right. Yeah, I find that to be a common theme of just, like, among the folks that we talk to here of that, lack of need of having to present an image of danger, so to speak, right? And at that point, coming out of the military and, there's a certain, requirement, it would seem like, I don't know if you were deployed or where, what your circumstance was in the military, but, um, your exterior relationship to the world, I think, has to be a certain way that's different than when you're in civilian life and you're doing that. And that making that transition, sometimes I've seen that to be an issue for young men. They're especially those who come out of combat, there's just a certain amount of psychological armor needed to preserve yourself. And then as you transition out of that, you have to be nimble, psychologically nimble to make those changes. I'm curious, like when you think about this transition at 27, you're coming out of certainly the youth of teens and that young 20s brain. Your brain's probably not even fully developed till around that time, right? Um, did the military prepare you to recognize the values that Master Sauer had, or did you find yourself having to learn a new language and get a new set of goggles to see those things?
I think it was a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Nice.
I think that like that persona of what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to act,
Right.
it is heavy. I
Mhm.
think, when you carry that around, because it's false, right?
Sure.
It's not real. Like if you have to act like that, it's not real. And so when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And it doesn't happen like right when you start jujitsu.
Sure.
Well, usually like, I don't know, I think around purple belt is when you start to realize like, I don't, this is what it is, like when I'm on the mat, it's like, this is truly who I am, whether
Right.
I'm, good today or not, this is who I am. And I think it's a weight off your shoulders, to tell you the truth. And I feel sorry for those people that go through their life that having to carry that with them their whole life.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that transition from military to, civilian life, with Master Sauer in my life was definitely a weight off my shoulders for sure.
Yeah. Physically speaking, when you come to jiu-jitsu, and it sounds like you had studied other things, was this something that you were just a natural at? And like as you stepped on the mats, you had the body awareness to understand it, or was it something foreign to you, and it was a slower incremental process? Because now you've got whatever, we've got 25 years of people might not have recognized you in 1997 when you stepped on the mat for the first time. So I'm curious if like the way you acquired the skill, or the skills was an easy road, or one that wasn't easy.
So, my worst sport in high school was wrestling,
Okay.
and my worst class was shop. Like I was in the shop because all the teachers were missing their fingers.
Yeah.
So I went on to be have a construction company, and my is surrounded around grappling.
Right.
I just tell everybody like I'm too stupid to know when to quit. And I think that's what I bring to the table. Like, I really like perseverance,
Yeah.
like if I find something I want to do and it doesn't matter what part of my life, I'm going to do it. And then the only luck that I've ever had in my life is I meet phenomenal people. And so, between that combination, meeting Master Sauer right then, and then just never quitting, I
Yeah.
think that's what has brought me to my point in my life right now.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no, I did not have a lot of natural talent for jujitsu, for grappling when I started.
Well, it makes me feel better because I thought of myself as even though I was an older athlete, I still think of myself as an athlete. And I'd had, like, I was very comfortable in a lot of athletic context, even as an adult, even in my 30s and 40s, I felt capable. And stepping on the mats for me, I was the most unusual athletic experience for me because I felt the least it was the least intuitive thing for me that I've ever done. Like I expected after a couple of weeks. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to be good, but I was expecting my brain to like be connected to my body. And 4 years in, I'm only at the super beginning of like, there's some maybe 3 brain cells that are actually in communication with my body, but mostly not.
Yeah,
So it's encouraging. I think, when you talk about, um, weights being lifted off your shoulder, to me that is about honesty. Like you have an honest relationship to the world in that regard, and it's just easier. And then to be tenacious, I think, is the primary virtue in almost all success.
for sure.
Like you can't give up. And when I got discouraged in my jujitsu journey early on, where I'm like, why am I so uh, retarded? Why can't I kind of understand this? I just decided, you know what, I'll just keep at it and see what happens and evaluate 10 years into it. If I'm still a white belt in 10 years, that's fine by me, but I'm just going to like see how it goes. Um, when you teach, and the other instructors around you teach, um, how do you, what's the philosophical underpinning for how to acquire skills in your gym, because in your gyms, because we find that, we call it the blue belt curse. We may get people through a year where the arc of development is very obvious. And then the arc of development slows relative, first year to second year is just different. And part of the reason why we started this podcast was to say, jiu-jitsu, you need to just keep at it. Like, don't give up, because the joys that are associated with it take place and fold over time. So I'm curious just kind of how you think about teaching and how you help people stay with it.
So I believe that any progress has 3 steps. The first thing is primitive movement, and that's come to anything with, and the next part is mechanical movement. We have to learn mechanical movement. And then only through those 2 steps can it become spontaneous, right?
Right.
And so, when we come in, we're like, man, I've done this before. Like, we still have primitive movements. And if you only do primitive movements, you'll never be successful at anything at a high level. But if you come in and learn, like your instructor teaches you the art of a Kimura, but you have to have that mechanical state. Like, you have to spend time drilling, not fighting. Everybody wants to come in and bang.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
Right.
like, man, I just want to do open mat. I love open mat. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I love it too. You leave, you feel strong, you beat a guy up, whatever, but like, did you really learn like how to do a Kimura? Did you learn the subtleties of it? And so I just tell everybody, if you're not progressing the way you probably want to, man, the guys that come in and bang, I'm telling them they're fighting way too much. Like, you're spending too much time grappling. Why don't you go drill for a while
Right.
and really get that down? And I think if you take that in any level, and I imagine like that's where you see like brown and black belts, even purple belts, they drill a ton. They won't add new stuff to their game. So I just, I think that if you come in with that process of learning, saying I need to make sure that I change from this primitive state to a really,
Yeah.
really mechanical state,
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
to become spontaneous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Hickson uses that expression, invisible, instincts, right? Or excuse me, trained instincts. And that to me is a version of what you were, talking about, in that your lizard brain is going to have your body react in a certain way, but you can actually get that lizard brain to, change over time. That, oh, when this happens, I do that. And it's interesting about like the spending more time fighting than perhaps drilling. And one of my favorite people in the world, this man named Professor Jason Hawkins, he wrote a book called Light on the Gentle Art. And when it comes to teaching, he has this thing. He's like, when anybody ever taught me something where they overwhelmed me with it, like, it didn't really impress is the wrong word. It didn't really stay with me. But anytime somebody, caught me in something or taught me something and it was effortless on their part, it was like magic in his mind. Right. And I think that's true for many of us, but that effortlessness can't occur without like a real refined sense of where the body should be relative to your partner or opponent's body. And that's a slow, long process, and patient too. Like, and it has to be done, in my opinion, in those slower modes, in those like, okay, this is what 1, 2, 3, rather than 1, 2, 3. I mean, we just can't keep up, I think. Yeah. Is that a fair paraphrase of kind of what you're saying?
For sure. And you have to have a good partner, right? Someone
Yes.
to do that, and that's the other thing I love the most about jiu-jitsu is we don't get better without other people.
I know.
But you got to have that good friend that's going to let you drill and use his body.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful,
I couldn't agree more. Of all of the sort of sport, martial art type of context, this experience that I'm having with jiu-jitsu speaks to that more than anything else. Like, I can't go home and learn this on my own. It has to be in the context of other people. Well, as you're teaching people and people are staying with you, I do have a curiosity about competition. Do you feel like, do you reserve competition for folks that want to see themselves as competitors, or do you think competition has a role in those folks that not necessarily seeking to distinguish themselves as champions, but that the competitive environment might give them something useful in other areas of their lives? Like, what's your opinion about competing?
I think it's super valuable for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that the competition itself sometimes isn't even, what is the to them. I think that, putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, I think the night before competition is teaching you so much. I think the days leading up to competition are the most important days.
Right.
That's where all the learning really is. That's where all the work is, and then the minute you go out there and you shake the guy's hand, you've done so much already.
Right.
And then whatever happens in that match, there's no, they always tell you there's no losing, no only learning. But
Right.
that's so true because, man, I've lost competitions and, man, I went out after and was like, God, I need to get back in the gym. I need to work. I
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Well, what a great thing I got from that competition. And if you win, great, huge, that's awesome.
Right.
But I just think, there's so much to be learned from competing. So I try to get everybody to compete at least once at every belt. And the ones that really love to compete,
Right.
try to help them to push them to keep competing.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, uh, given where I am in my life and how little consequence there is to winning or losing relative to other people, and how nervous and how much it dominates my thinking and all the rest of it. Um, I I see it as a one of the best places to develop self mastery, because right, I mean the biggest opponent in life generally is our own disposition, our own mind, and um, so when I sign up for competitions, and competitions for me mean local, fun, stuff. I'm not going any place fancy where someone's paying attention to it. But even
Right.
so, you would think I'm like in the Olympic trials on the ADCC, world fair, just in terms of my own internal experience, right? Like I'm
Well, it
nervous. It's for me, exactly. When just given the length of time that you've been, uh, involved in this, if I ask you like, what's your most memorable, fight or competition, is there one that pops to mind? Like, oh man, this is the one I remember more than any other fight match.
Well, I always talk about my first one, because who I had to compete against. But I think the one that really
Well,
that
well, who did you? Well, let's not skip that. Who did you have to compete against?
well, so man, I didn't want to know, and I was a brand new black belt, and I went out there, and it's master division, so it's like
Sure.
best
Yeah.
of guys, and it was Paulo Guilbel, right out the gate. I was like, wow, I'm so pretty starstruck there. So that was amazing,
Yeah.
you know. But my first when I fought in the worlds, in Brazil at the Tijuca Tennis Club,
Wow.
and that was like a goal for me because when I was coming up, I would see magazines of the
Yeah.
worlds taking place there. And I was like, man, I really, really want to go to Brazil and compete there. And I was able to compete in the last Master Worlds that was held at that
Oh,
Tajikistan.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that was very, very special to me, you know. And so when I look back, I think that's one of my fondest moments for sure.
Yeah. So it seems to me that feeling connected to Jiu-Jitsu's history and being connected to, I mean, obviously you have that through Master Sauer, but then to be in the geography, the heartland of those things, I mean, must have felt just really just amazing.
Amazing,
Yeah.
you know. And then in that Tajuka Tennis Club, is like everything it should be, right? Like I was just it felt like I was like in a real fight, like a lot of work. Having really, because I had never been, American, I'd never experienced anything like that. And, yeah, the excitement was unreal.
What way from a just like the actual, match experience, like, is there an obvious distinguisher between like, hey, I'm in a different set of ethics here than I am in the United States? Like what was the biggest, most obvious difference?
Um, Man, I think the bullpen, like waiting for the fight, like it's real. I cheer in there, like all the Brazilians, they want to kill you, that's their sport. And
Right.
you're an American,
Oh, yeah, right.
you know what I mean? And so you're in the bullpen waiting, and you're just like, oh my God, these guys are like going to try to kill me. And and then it's all in Portuguese, right? So you
Sure.
don't understand what's going on, and they call your name. You're like, is that my name? Like, and then my name, Diaz.
Yeah.
It was so many there, But I just think that environment just felt so different from America, because in America, like, it's just different. It's like more, um, what I'm used to, I guess.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I grew up over there, and it was just like culture shock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have to go out there and shake a guy's hand and see what happens.
Oh,
So,
without a doubt. Yeah, that's so great that you held on to that goal. You got to have that experience, and you'll always have that like that moment in time, and to have the bullpen. I always find it is especially at my age to be in with different people take on a different persona when they're in there, uh, and if I was in your shoes, like the language alone, I mean, not being able to speak it would be disorienting a little bit because, for me, I'm always like, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't also want to be in the flow of how everything's going. So I don't want to, and that may sound silly, but I don't want to screw anything up by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And,
yeah.
it just adds to the like the heightenedness of the feelings. In all this time and all these people that you've touched, we've heard really dramatic stories of professors talking about students and that. And I'm curious if you got maybe your favorite or the most impactful story of how you saw somebody come in, decide to stay with you and learn, and how jujitsu impacted their life.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty close to all my students, and I could probably tell you like how it's affected pretty much, every one of them, I would think. But there is this family that came in, and the the girls were very like reserved and very shy and very introverted and not confident at all.
Hmm.
And older, they were like not older, they were like in high school, right? And really hard time, especially for girls, right? Like so
Yeah, sure.
tough time for them. And they came in, and they weren't athletes at all. And we started working with them, just getting their bodies moving. Um, the one sister is phenomenal. She can beat boys now.
All
She's
right.
super talented. Like she's really bendy, that
Y-
kind of longer body style, really bendy, kind of hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Probably does things a lot of people can't do, but
Right.
she's good at it. And you saw her confidence go out of the roof.
Yeah. How
This
awesome.
sister, is very talented too. She's on the high school wrestling team now.
Oh, wow.
So I think she's still wrestling right now. So you took these kids that were just so introverted, so shy, like targets for bullies, like no
Right.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And every time they step on the mat, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
And I think, man, that's what jujitsu is. I think that's what we're supposed to do. I think that even without me, if anybody walks it like into the academy, the art of jujitsu will give you what you need
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
long as you don't quit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. Nice. Yeah.
that's what I think of a lot.
We talk, Professor Lucas will use this kind of expression about like the folks that need, to become a little more assertive and to feel more confident in the world, jujitsu will give them a little more of that like confidence. And then there are folks that are maybe a little too aggressive and, need to be tamped down in the world, and jujitsu would do that to them. And one of the things that is important to me, and I love to kind of hear stories of and all that, is how jujitsu is serving, young people. And I have 4 daughters of my 5 kids. And so like how it's affecting none of my kids, sadly have followed me into any jujitsu, but there's other things that serve in their life in the same manner. Because when you take somebody like that and give them that confidence, that that's going to echo for the rest of their life. Those daughters will carry, these feelings of confidence and capableness well past high school into that. And in a way that I think it's hard to get elsewhere. I mean, it's one thing to beat somebody on the soccer field. It's another one to kind of have that experience of like, okay, in this moment of time, I've submitted this person. I mean, that's a type of confidence, um, not to be expressed in a bad way, but particularly as a girl, just because I have these 4 daughters, like I want them to feel, hey, I can take care of myself in the world should I need to.
the best gift that you can give your daughters for sure.
Yeah,
Is, yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. I love how in our gyms we have, Professor Lucas's gyms, we have a lot of little ones, and in those 5 to 8 years of age where the physical differences are smaller, it's between the boys and the girls. I get a lot of pleasure of seeing, the girls being so dominant at times. For
I
them,
think they're way better than the boys. Most of the
I have a prejudice in that direction, because I'm a girl dad. I don't know what to say.
care. Me too.
Professor Mike, like thanks for spending time with us, man. This was great, and I love talking to you and hearing your stories, and I appreciate you sharing what you did with us.
Oh, anytime, anytime. Thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
brother.
All right.